Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we have the privilege to interview Adam Robinson. Adam is the founder and CEO of Retention.com, which he's bootstrapped into 14 million ARR in 2.5 years with 6 people. Retention.com is an identity resolution service that has the ability to identify 1/3 of your anonymous website traffic so you can market to those potential customers. Read that sentence again. It's magical. Prior to Retention, Adam was the founder and CEO of Robly Email Marketing, which was bootstrapped, and he exited for 8 figures to a private equity company in 2020. We are really excited to share Adam's story and knowledge with the listeners today and dig in on everything email. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So first things first, tell us a little bit of background on your life story and experiences and prior jobs, and what led you to founding Retention.com?
Stop working for the man.
That's right.
Awesome.
I once worked for the man. I graduated college in 2003. I went to New York because you can make the most money if you got a job in an investment bank. I didn't even really know what that meant. But I still had good grades, so I could get a job. Worked at Lehman Brothers, and I made my way to the credit default swap trading desk. And I was there from 2003 through the financial crisis when they went bankrupt, joined Barclays, who bought them afterwards, and did that for like 8 or 9 years. They made a movie about that job. It's called The Big Short. Literally that is what I did, which was crazy and fun to watch. Some of the guys I worked with like characters in the movie. And I got to New York, and these guys who were my first roommates were starting this website called Vimeo in my apartment. And I watched that thing happen. And, I just, the whole time I was doing that trading job, and my brother was also an entrepreneur. He had like a low tech business that he like used the internet for and did really well. And, I was just watching these two different people that I was two different sort of pockets of people that I was close to. And they appeared to be getting a deeper satisfaction out of what they were doing than just sort of, showing up at the casino every day in your suit and tie. So, and then I had this great mentor too. So the interesting thing about the job that I have is it was this weird thing where it's a bunch of 25-year-olds, they gave these credit default swap books to these young kids because there was no action in them. And then all of a sudden they became the center of the universe when the world exploded because it was default insurance. Everybody like had to have it. And then it kind of went back to being super boring after the financial crisis. And with all these regulations and stuff, just the market was shrinking like crazy. And, I had kind of saved enough money to be like, I don't really want to do this anymore. I want to go try to be an entrepreneur, whatever that meant. Right. And I sort of agreed with this Jeff Bezos quote that like, we're in the first inning of the internet. Like, he's got the whole, it's still day one or whatever. Like, and I still think that it's just, there's no question to me that, building software and working in the internet will like keep me employed if my skills are good forever, for as long as I'm living. Maybe the robots take it away at some point, but like, I'm hoping that I'm building the robots, right? Like, that's sort of my attitude. It's like, this is the game I want to be playing. So, it was a horribly long and winding road. I had this really silly idea when I started that I would like kind of invest I would invest chunks of money in things and sort of be involved at like a high level in a lot of different enterprises. And, I had no experience, no filter, but like a super high level of confidence in myself. And I picked 5 things that I was stupidly going to sort of chaperone with no experience. I mean, it just doesn't even make sense when I say it, like it's just totally the opposite of what I think now, and then like somehow, like by the grace of God, this email service provider called Robly, which you mentioned, happened to work. And the only reason it worked, the genesis of that story was my brother, for his business, was using this app for customer reviews on his website in email marketing. And the dude who started it like raised 25 million bucks of venture and shut it. It just, something happened. He walked out. They shut the whole thing down in a day. And they're like, download all your data, switch to MailChimp. Like, this thing's going away. My brother was like, this is a really novel, interesting combination of products. This guy spent a lot of money acquiring customers. Let's like build it for cheap in India and then go see if we can find his customers. So I was like, okay, that's one of 5 things I'm doing now, like let's do that. And it was just the whole got the software built. And then like, finally, like, this guy I still work with, Tate, who's like my CTO, is a Stanford comp sci guy and an all-American swimmer, like rebuilt the thing and like entirely. Like, he's just like, this is unusable. Like, if you want me to work with you, I'm starting over. I mean, a series of, so like, from the text that I got from my brother that we should do this to when we launched our product, it was almost 2 years. To give you an idea with our current product, from when I made the first wireframe, so I'm skipping a lot here, but like that. So the interesting thing about the first company was the actual founder of the company. I read a bunch of books on content marketing. I was like, oh, if you just make a YouTube video, you'll get thousands of customers for your SaaS app, because that's what these blog posts tell me. And so like, I'm making these videos and I'm like, blah, blah. So this guy sees one of them, the founder of the other company. He's like, come to Boston. If you do what you're going to try to do, it's not going to work. I can show you how to, at the very least, get like a very nice cash flow business out of this. He's like, I found something. I found it too late. I raised way too much money. I never got my revenues above my expenses. That's why the whole thing blew up. So he comes to Boston and he's like, I'm not going to tell you too much. My partner's trying to start a data company, but like, there is an email marketing company down the road that is leaving an unbelievable amount of customer information all over the internet, and they don't know it. And he's like, you can find that information and you can build a little call center and you can get thousands of people to pay you for the software if you just do it. So I was like, oh, well, that's cool. And, it worked. Like it was also brutal. Spent every penny I had getting it to sort of this cash flow positive thing. And while I will not say the name of the company that we were poaching customers from in Boston, that is an email marketing company, and not MailChimp, that's a hard market. Like, it's so mature and there's so many vendors who are selling the same thing, and there's just like a few dominant brands. So we had this, it was a finite opportunity of information you could pull off of the internet and pull customers over. It wasn't infinite, right? There's only so many people willing to do that. And like the nature of the customer base was like baby boomer, non-e-commerce, sending newsletters to their flower shop once a week, didn't care about features, didn't care about tech. Like, it was just a really hard customer to build for. There was good things that came from it, because you had to make the software incredibly, keep it simple, stupid, but like, it was just a tough thing. When we got to the end of this lead acquisition, or lead sort of bringing over 5,000 customers or whatever we got, that we were sitting there with a product that wasn't really competitive on its own right. It was only competitive because we had this phenomenal channel to get our first batch of customers. So, the next 3 years, I had this moment where I was like, okay, we did the sales thing. I think I need to do digital marketing, right? We have this SaaS app. It's low cost. Marketing makes sense. So I started taking digitalmarketer.com classes left, right, and center. And like, I remember very vividly over Thanksgiving in 2016, there was this yellow card that was the statement of value card. And it was so simple. It was just like, blank helps blank buy blank. And I could not say a single thing about my company that would make somebody use it and not MailChimp. So I was like, oh shit. Like, forget marketing. Like we got it, but luckily it's like a subscription business. It was like a nice cash machine. It was like, like I had a great lifestyle for a single guy. It was really, it was like the perfect polarizing situation. Cause like at the moment it was amazing, but it like wasn't growing. So it's dying. Like definitely had to come up with something else. So for the next 3 years, I tried to figure out what I could do that MailChimp was not doing. Right. Because that made sense to me. It's like, well, they're doing all this stuff. Surely there are things that they are not doing. And I made a slew of horrible mistakes in analyzing market opportunity. Basically 2 years in a row, big ones. Like found this girl who, first I got convinced to take over the partner program by a guy who was running the partner program at the company that we were poaching customers from. And I thought it was novel. It was this boots on the ground operation selling software that MailChimp for sure wasn't doing. And his impression was that the unit economics were fine to do it, which, I ended up spending, like $100,000 over 3 months and getting sued. And I finally realized that like, this was totally not positive unit economics. It was like a branding exercise for them, just like getting people out there in that audience and butts in seats, like paying people. So, and then I found this girl who, she's like, well, there's an opportunity right above MailChimp, which tried to build a whole other software to like serve it. And it was just a whole mess. Anyway, finally came across this identity thing and I heard about it. And I literally just heard about it. And I was like, what are you talking? Like, what? Like, there is the ability in the world to identify someone who hits somebody's website and get an email address and then give it to that person. I'm like, why is no one selling this? Like I know with our customers, I could sell it to every single one of them. Like, and by the way, I thought it was not CAN spam compliant when I heard about it. And I was like, I could still sell that to every single one of our customers. They wouldn't give a shit. They would say, you know what I mean? Because like like if you look at the lawsuits that have actually happened as a result of CAN spam, A, the penalties are not high, and B, it's people who are being very, very, very spammy, right? So my whole thing was like, not like, surely people will want to buy these emails, even if it's like not sort of like kosher, because there's a world of people renting and buying lists out there. Like, lo and behold, I realized it is actually CAN spam compliant in the US, which was like amazing. My assumption the entire time is that the open rates would suck somehow. Like we came up with this process to like make the engagement of these emails like better than people's house lists, which is just mind boggling, So anyway, fast forward, we had this ESP, this email marketing app. It took me a year and a half to figure out how to actually do the identity thing. And I'm like, this is going to be how we differentiate in the email space. The big email players literally can't do this because they're in this self-regulatory deliverability organization called MOG that prohibits them from selling data. If they want to be in this organization where they can pick up the phone and call someone at Hotmail if they have a problem, they can't sell data. So I'm like, this is the perfect feature. It's going to be a killer feature in the email marketing space. It's going to differentiate us versus everybody else. So created the feature. People were signing up for our email marketing app, using the identity thing, downloading the file, putting it in Klaviyo or Drip or whatever, and then giving us a 10 out of 10 on the NPS score. Which at that point, I'm like, okay, this is a really good indicator that this is like not a good feature to try to get people to switch ESPs because they don't want to do it. And our feature set kind of is behind versus everybody else. This would be an incredible thing if we spun it out, connected it to literally everything, and made it really easy to get up and going on. So, that was Get Emails in January of 2020. And that's all that it was until, kind of like 4 months ago. Is this amazing, like that name, Get Emails. It's just so direct. Like I originally thought we were going to sell to affiliate marketers because I was under the impression that this was not CAN spam compliant, like even having owned an ESP for like 5 years. Turns out e-commerce is like bread and butter, Shopify Plus in particular. So like the 14,000 Shopify stores at the top of the 4.5 million Shopify world, like it works for like 95% of those guys. And I think the reason why is it's a function of, we can't resolve traffic unless you have traffic. If you don't have a profitable email program, then paying any price for a lead it's going to be worse for you, Right. But if both of those things are really strong to start with, this is just like maybe not as high as intent as an opt-in, but the engagement is so good and the price is so low and the deliverability is so high that if you just steadily pour this stuff in over time, it works unbelievably well if all that other stuff's going on. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the medium length story of why we're talking right now.
A couple things I want to circle back on before we dig into email. So Adam, incredible story. You've got a ton of experience. I think David would agree with me. The Big Short, probably one of my top 5 movies of all time. And so before we dig into like emails, to me, that's kind of a crazy period right there. A couple things about your story. You said you had 5 different projects going on. In my mind, it's kind of like having fishing poles in. You're just kind of fishing for what's working. And one of them worked. That's like entrepreneurship, right? And right. The other piece that really stood out to me is that you said you had a really high confidence level. And I think you have to have that. Or
so have you guys seen this? There's like I saw one of my buddies who's also an entrepreneur post this years ago on Twitter. So it's like the x-axis is time in years and the y-axis is level of confidence in your entrepreneurial abilities. And it like starts high and it drops straight down. And then it's this like slow build over like 20 years, which that is exactly it. It's like, you have no idea how lost you are until you're so far in it. And then it's like, oh my God. And then finally now, 10 years later, like, I don't want to jinx myself, but like, I think I kind of know how to do this. Like, I think I could start another one and it would probably work, Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think like you come into it, like you said, the axis that you come into it and you're like hard charging and so fired up, and then you get your ass beat and knocked down, and then you slowly start learning over time. And so it makes sense. So one quick thing before we dig into more emails. Do you have one from that crazy period of The Big Short? Do you have one story? You were surrounded by a lot of madness for probably about 5 years. Is there one story that stands out to you that the audience would like
this like could have been in a movie? So the seat that I was in, we were what was called market makers. And like it was like a store, like a hedge fund would show up and they would say, make me a price and like whatever swap contract for whatever it's in. So, and you'd say like, I'm, 100, 105 and I'll buy, right? So like you're the store and you're managing this inventory of stuff. So they were our customers, but we had these interdealer brokers that when you needed to lay off risk, you would like trade with someone at Goldman or like Morgan Stanley or whatever. And we were their customers and they had literally no competitive advantage other than entertaining people. And they lost the money if they didn't spend 10% of their budget. So like, quarterly, people would just be like, yo, like, can you like go skiing this weekend? Or like, can you, can we just like, can we go to Vegas? Like we just got to go spend some money somewhere, So there was one of these weekends where one of the guys was like, dude, I got to like spend some dough. Like, are you free? Can you be at the helipad tomorrow at 9 a.m.? And I was like, yeah, I can be there. So I get there and it's like, me and like 4 other dudes that like have my job. We get in this chopper from the downtown heliport. They fly us to this racetrack in Jersey and they've just got like Ferraris, Lamborghinis, like Astons, Porsches, Beamer, like every dream car you could ever imagine. And they're just like, they got us each race car instructors. And it's just like, we're going to just rip these cars around this racetrack all day and we're going to teach you how to do it. Nice. And then flew us back. Like that to me is like such a, vivid and representative memory of like it was just such a weird thing. It's like, man, we just like, it's these guys who realize that the only way they're going to get trades from you is by creating these crazy experiences and having you remember them, and having to spend an unbelievable amount of money in like, the next 24 hours. It was an interesting time. They're not doing that anymore. They're not the guys who had my job now, they're not even allowed to go out to dinner with these brokers anymore, let alone all of the shenanigans that were happening. Like they can't even accept a dinner. If they go, they have to pay for themselves.
Definitely times have changed since then, but no, that's pretty cool. Well, cool. Awesome. So let's pivot a little bit into, just so the audience has some background. So David and I have been using retention. We've been testing retention.com's software in our own businesses for several months now, and it's working really well. So Adam, can you dig into a little bit? You touched on it a little bit earlier about kind of what retention does. Kind of one of the main features is capturing emails from anonymous traffic. Can you speak maybe at a high level, like how does that work? Is it legal?
So yes, so we've been doing a bunch of stuff that we haven't even been talking about because it wasn't relevant. That's now a little bit more relevant now, but like just the get emails part of it, right? The first tool, the thing that you guys are using. The idea is that there are so in order to serve ads in the ad tech world, there are a bunch of publisher networks that enable that. And they basically, through authentication events, people logging in, people clicking in emails, they're able to either cookie people's browsers or match browser characteristics with a hashed email, which a hashed email is an email address that has been encrypted in a way that a human being cannot unencrypt it. MD5 is a hashing language. SHA-256 is a hashing language. So several of these publisher cookie pools, if you want to call them that, there's one use case is to serve banner ads. Other people are involved for different reasons. So we've aggregated a bunch of these networks that allow us to basically give our customer a pixel that has all of the pixels of all of these different networks that we're involved in it, so that when someone comes to your website, if they see that cookie, we can see if there's one of these hashed email addresses in it. If there is, then you're like, okay, that's great, but a human being can't unhash it. Well, the way one would unhash it if one wanted to is one would go around and accumulate all of the email addresses in America and just hash all them in the same language. Because at that point, it's just a VLOOKUP. So this is not in the spirit of what they were trying to accomplish with this anonymous ad network, but this is what we're enabling. And it really works, as you guys know. So
yeah.
So that is the essence of the first product. It's like we're taking this cookie pool, aggregating these cookie pools. We're basically sending signals from, and we're de-anonymizing this anonymous information. And then the last step, the reason it really works, I'm an email guy. I owned an email marketing company before. Deliverability, the art and science of getting a piece of marketing email into the inbox. It is tricky. It's everything. We figured out that if we buy a bunch of open and click signals from the broader email ecosystem, and we make sure before we give our customer an email address that they've opened and clicked in like the last 7 to 14 days, depending on what the other characteristics of the email address are, that really works for deliverability, because that person was on your website and they're opening and clicking other stuff. So that means they're not a spam trap. They're not a dead address, which those two things are like what gets you in trouble in email. If you start sending to spam traps, essentially, and bad, old, unengaged emails. So that's product number one. And it's beautifully provocative to speak about. It's just so great. It's a whole topic of conversation in itself on podcasts like this because of the questions that you just asked. How is it legal? How can you do something like that? Like, it's just, you can talk for days about it. So the reason that it's legal is because the Can Spam Act of 2003 in the US. So you cannot do this in Europe, but like our IPs are ring fenced. Every email we have is tied to a US postal address. We feel pretty good about the fact that 99.99% of these emails that we're going to give you are from the US. So can't do it in Europe, can't do it in Canada. In the US, Can Spam of 2003 is actually opt-out, which I spoke a lot about in the beginning of the podcast. The world would lead you to believe that email in the US is an opt-in sport. I certainly believed that. And I owned an ESP. I literally was like operating as a business owner in the market. And I had a total misunderstanding of the legislation until an attorney set me down and said, this is actually what the law says.
Wow.
It says, so long as you have an opt-out. So then it begs the question, why aren't we all spamming each other all the time? Because what matters in email is not whether you got an opt-in or not at the end of the day. What matters is the engagement of your send. That is what Gmail cares about. That is what Yahoo cares about. That is what AOL cares about. That is what Yahoo. If you have a high open, high click, low unsubscribe, low complaint email stream, it does not matter if those people opt in or not. It would be way better for you to send more to that if the people didn't opt in than to send to an opt-in list that was the opposite of that, if that makes sense.
We've been testing the product. We're seeing, you spoke to a little bit about kind of some of the stuff your team's doing on the back end for there's one thing is to capture an email, and then it's to use it effectively. And so, we're seeing open rates of around above 60% on the emails that we're capturing through retention. And so it's pretty incredible. And especially if it's kind of your, like the first product that you're releasing. I'm excited to see what you and your team are working on and kind of gonna follow up with that. So yeah, I'll turn it over to David for the next question.
Absolutely. So to your clients that are e-commerce customers, they capture these emails, and then what? What are the next steps? How are they using these to increase revenue?
So strictly speaking on that product, onboarding it is very simple. Like assuming, and you guys are from the Amazon world, which is, can't do it on Amazon. They won't let you. But if you have your own website off Amazon, we have people doing it night and day. So you would put the pixel on, you would integrate it with your email service provider. Then let's say you have a welcome series in Klaviyo. You literally just copy it, paste the welcome series, change the subject line of the welcome series to thanks for stopping by the site. Let it run. I mean, if there's any nuanced language that wouldn't make sense unless you changed it, change that. But let it run. What we see, and this is like, 2 3/4 years in, is the ongoing act of retargeting these people over email is what converts. It's like, of course, the first email is going to make the most money. But if you were the sum of every point of contact after the welcome series is like 75% of the total P&L of the program. The welcome series is only like 25, if that makes sense. So just hitting these people with newsletters over and over again is what converts over time. It makes sense. You need 7 to 8 brand impressions to buy. People come back as repeat customers. Of course, it's going to be backward loaded, right? We have this other product for, like a Shopify type store. It's called Reclaim, which I don't know how or why it took so long to sort of realize this, but here's the idea with Reclaim. With the same identity capability. So here's something that almost no one knows. For a Shopify store, in order for that person to get an abandoned cart email sent to them, they actually have to be logged in to your Shopify store. Are you guys aware of that?
No.
If they're not logged in, there is no way to associate the behavior of that session to an actual person and an email address. Because how would you? You know what I mean? It's just you're anonymous.
Yeah.
So what is the next thing that comes to your mind? Wow, if someone had a great identity graph that could literally identify all this anonymous traffic, then you could enable all of these cart abandonment emails to go out. So the first product, we weren't sending down the funnel email. It's just enabling a newsletter, the welcome series in the newsletter. Reclaim is the same idea. It's just for the bottom of the funnel stuff. So cart abandonment, product abandonment, category abandonment. And it works phenomenally well also. I'm sure you're not surprised. If you just send out more of the most lucrative email that exists, you make more money. So yeah, that is the bulk of what e-commerce companies do. And the implementation on that one's not bad either. It's just, it's wherever you have these abandoned cart pixels on your site. I mean, Amazon is obviously different, but if you're running your own store, we have a pixel you put next to it. It runs all the events through us, whoever we can identify. We send to your ESP where you have forked your abandoned cart flow. And it's basically like there's the old fork and our fork. And it's very easy to see the net new messages we enabled, which turned into net new revenue for you.
So I want to move into a little bit more of lifetime value. It's kind of a metric that we're tracking and kind of figuring out how to capture this and really measure it. So how can you touched on it a little bit earlier, you had mentioned the 7-8 touches to kind of get a sale as kind of the average. So how do you properly calculate lifetime value of an email address? And then how long does that take? Is it like, depends on the product? Like if it's something consumers use every week or every month or maybe once a year, can you speak to that a little bit?
Every business is different, and there is a whole field called attribution that does mental masturbation about this topic left and right. Now, where this is my view, and you could call it self-serving, but this is my view for how you would have to look at what we're doing. I think that the only logical way to calculate the ROI of the emails that you're giving us is to pick a point in the future, draw a line in the sand, download the list with all of the customer lifetime values next to it at that point, and look at what you paid us until that point and compare the numbers. Now, some people are like, well, what if they would have subscribed on their own later? What if they would have? So a lot, super anal smart brands. And I would say this is like, with the type of person we're selling to, this is like 1% at this point. I think if we moved up market from where we are, it would be higher. But you can do a holdout test. You can say, I'll take this segment and I won't have the pixel fire, and I'll track that segment over the course of this period that we just discussed. And then I'll use retention.com on this other segment. And then I'll compare, and I'll see, retention.com is saying they got me 8X, but if the emails would have all signed up and converted anyway on their own, they're not really giving me 8X, right? So that's what a holdout test would do. What is annoying for us is like none of the email service providers, or Google Analytics or anything, all of these platforms are campaign-based attribution rather than list-based attribution. So they will tell you that your welcome series generated $1,000. They won't tell you what happened to those emails over the next 12 months. They'll only tell you what happened to them over that campaign. They'll tell you what happened if you were to take this list and send to only it once a week forever. You could then but if it's like part of all the rest of the campaigns you're sending, which is the only practical way to do this, I think you would have to do it the way we tell people to do it, which is just, we gave you the email address, go see how much they bought from you. Like,
yeah.
And we have a dashboard, we have a revenue script. we, people check our numbers versus, doing what I just described, going to Klaviyo and adding it up or whatever. So, and then, you mentioned different types of businesses, and every business is so different. It has been and I don't have someone spending time on this, like kind of when you're in the phase we are with the resources we are, it's like, we're just drowning in activity and like, sure. I would love to know the answers to those questions based upon verticals and stuff. I have seen people with very high LTV do incredibly well with this. I'm talking like numbers that don't even make sense. Like 100, like Tonal is like 168x ROI on these emails, but they sell a $4,000 gym,
Sure.
But yeah, when you come in our sales funnel, we generally say, we think in 60 days, if you're not like 2 to 3x, we want to change something, Sure. And then people who use it, because there's this, the repeat purchase effect, and this is a difficult concept for me to articulate clearly, but when you measure after 60 days, you just paid us for emails that probably didn't buy, and you just paid us half of the total that you paid us. So half of what you paid us is essentially worthless, but you're still using that in the calculation. If you go 3 years, it's 1/36 of what you paid us is the useless emails, and you have 3 years of people repeat purchasing. So anybody who's made it over a year, you go look at their dashboard, it's just stupid. It's like 25x ROI or like 20, whatever. But like, unfortunately, we haven't figured out how to articulate that message to people. It's just so much easier to be like, here's the quick hit. Like, it's super easy to do. I'll show you the ROI or whatever. But the real, this is just the best way to own an audience that you don't have to pay for media to access. So the power of that is in contacting it over and over and over again.
So just to kind of recap that in my mind, like depending on, and like you said, you touched on it, every business is different. Every sales cycle is different. And so if you just pick let's just say 12 months, hey, I'm going to run these 12 months, do a look back. And then you're right, like 1/12 of those are just new. They haven't even hit the 7 or 8 touch points yet. And so you take that data from the last 12 months and analyze that, say, hey, where did these emails come from? Take your whole list, which ones are from, from retention, and then look at the revenue on there versus what you paid retention. Simple concept. I mean, lots of ways to get down in the weeds and like do split testing.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly like for most. Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So for our listeners that have active campaigns, it seems like the getting emails is step one, but step two is having effective sequences on the back end. And so what is kind of the industry standard for open rates, click-through rates, conversions? And just so if some of our listeners are running campaigns, like, are they on par with the industry? Are they doing better? Do they have room for improvement? What are your thoughts there?
Especially after this Apple thing, I hear stuff that's all over the map based upon people's sources of traffic, So if like your source of traffic is mostly mobile, Safari or something, like your open rate is going to be higher because it's like an Apple open, like throws a fake open. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
I like to just, rather than comparing it with an industry, I like to compare it with what you're doing right now. Like look at our welcome series versus your existing one. Shockingly, it should not look that out of line, right? Like opens, clicks, conversions, like these are less intent than someone who gave you an opt-in. I would expect for there to be slightly lower click-through rates, a slightly lower conversion rate. But when you look at the cost of generating a lead any other way at like more than, I mean, it's just the best way to do it. So yeah, that is, rather than, the statement, this will work as well as your house list, seems to assuage people's concern, or at least get them to try it. I always say sort of like, you don't even have to believe me. There's a size that you could try this on where it would be impossible to hurt you, and just try it. And then when you see the results, scale it up. And if you don't, cancel it.
Cool.
So in terms of if someone wanted to dip their toe in the water and like give it a try, what would they be looking at in terms of, pricing and emails, and how long do you need to engage with the platform before you can kind of prove out that concept?
Yeah. So like I was saying in a couple answers ago, the real results come after doing it for a long, long time, because you're just accumulating so much more of a first party audience than you get any other way. And it takes a while to warm them up, and they purchase repeat purchases. I think you can see what you need to see in 60 days. We got a plan for $500. I don't know how many emails it is, I forget, but it's enough, whatever, 2,500 a month or something. It's enough to see it. And then you can, choose your own adventure from there.
Cool. So we really like the Pareto principle, 80-20. And so if you had to say, hey, if I only have X amount of hours, which flows am I going to run to make the most revenue in e-commerce? What, in your experience, what have you seen the flows that are like the top 3 flows that are money makers?
Everybody who's not an Amazon, everybody who's got their own store, like Klaviyo has won that market, and they force you to set up an abandoned cart when you create the account, which is wonderful. It's the best flow. Our product helps you get out some multiple of what you're going to send otherwise. Adding an SMS collection and message before that flow hits for anybody you have a phone number for, and then waiting in that flow to see if they converted from the SMS, is a wonderful move. And that to me is like a pretty low hanging fruit. Klaviyo's got an SMS platform right now. The second low hanging fruit related to abandonment is, I think, based upon people that I've talked to, everybody has cart abandonment set up. Maybe 25% of people have product abandonment set up, meaning you're browsing around, you're looking at a product, they didn't put it in the cart, but they bailed. Those are phenomenally high performing emails. There's something about the timing and the personalization and whatever. Those are amazing. So, and we can also grow the audience of who those go to as well. So unrelated to our products, if you never want to go to retention.com again, I would say, if you're not doing those two things, adding a cart abandonment, collecting SMS, collecting phone number somehow, and adding an SMS touch point to your cart abandonment, and then adding SMS and adding a product abandonment and putting SMS on that too, those will print money. And then related to our products, man, it's just the effectiveness of this original Get Emails tool is incredible. It's just, you just grow your email list so much faster than any other way. And it's, the data will show you it's people who actually care. It will be a little bit slower for them to purchase than other people, but and that flow is just the welcome series. So, and one thing I would add is, after a few emails, I would pull people who don't engage. If that makes sense. If they don't open in 3, pull them. And then for Apple users, if they don't click in 30 sends or something like that, just pull them. Because, there's this idea in email that the more aggressive that you get, the more discipline you have to be with pruning people off of your list. The whole active, engaged body that you're sending to is what enables, a higher concentration of lower intent emails.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like an ecosystem. You definitely need to have a healthy list to get into that inbox and not find the promotions or spam or whatever else. So awesome. I know we're coming up on time. I wanted to see if David, if there's any other questions that you want to ask Adam or.
Yeah, I would like to ask some questions about bootstrapping a business. Yeah. Any pro tips on living the cash poor life when growth is exploding?
I had made some money trading. My brother had made some money, so it wasn't like we'd come out of college and we were like literally starting from nothing. But it wasn't like we went out and raised a bunch of money either. It was like a weird hybrid. It was almost bootstrap, but it was like that was terrible. But we were able to. It was actually kind of a nice cash flow business by the time we started this one, and it was sort of the vehicle that allowed us to get this one off the ground. But in reading about how to build good SaaS businesses, I mean, if like there's this blog called SaaStocked. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of it. Like basically the sum of everything that guy says is you need to sell a higher price SaaS product. Like it's like 10,000 articles that say the same thing. So I had been obsessed with trying to come up with a way to sell like, maybe like a $5,000 a month high velocity SaaS product. And I just thought, if you could do that, you don't have any cash problems. And this didn't start that way. Like we had a $19 plan and a $99 plan or whatever. But like now, like anybody that our salespeople talk to, they're like doing $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 deals, and they're closing them in 30 minutes. And when you have that dynamic going on, and I have waited way too long to like ramp the staff up, which this experience has actually been like a wildly cash flow positive deal for us, like the whole time. From like, there was like a hurdle of like, I had 6 people the day that we launched it. Basically it was getting paid for by the other company. And there was like a number that was like, I don't even remember what it was, 60 grand a month, 70 grand a month, that like everybody was getting salaries and all our expenses were paid. And somehow we got there in like 4 months or 5 months or something like that. It was insane.
Nice.
And it's been growing very fast. It's just been growing like crazy ever since. And, we're not really doing any market. So yeah, but there, even though it wasn't like eating ramen, the experience, I still think it's so different than having venture capital, it being your own money and like, like working towards capital efficiency and like wanting this lean operation, and like not measuring your success by the amount of people that are sitting around. I mean, it's just a total philosophical, like you're looking the other way. Like there's one way to like measure how well a company's doing, and that is the venture way. And like mine fails every one of their metrics, except for the fact that I'm just growing faster than they are, with like 1/100th of the resources, but I think where I've landed on this, so I read a lot of like the 37 Signals guys, like Remote, Rework, the Lean Startup, books like that before I started my last company. And coming from Wall Street, the appeal of having a remote, very lean, cash flow positive, very slow growth software company where you can like live at a ski mountain and work with your friends and like work 4 hours a day, like that is like, it calls you like religiously almost, that got boring for me. And I started reading a lot of Y Combinator's stuff, and I just like love I think it applies to e-commerce too, like their attitude about product market fit, and this idea that until you really have it, you shouldn't do anything else other than try to get it. And like, I know we have it at this company because you don't grow like we're growing with 6 people and no marketing, unless you do. Our last company, we certainly never did. We just like had this one channel. And I think trying to have the discipline in the ways that Y Combinator evaluates a successful companies. So like they want to look at weekly growth rate and like things like product market fit and, stuff like that. And also add in the capital efficient lean component is like a very interesting approach, which is where I've landed now. Like that's how I want to run my company. I don't want it to be venture backed, but I like love this, product-led growth, if you want to call it that, which I think if you're an entrepreneur, you're in sales and you're in product design. That's it. Like, and maybe an experience design around that product, and then company design to fulfill all of that, right? No matter what you're doing. So, I love not answering to anybody. I love not having cash problems. Like, I have friends that are raising their next round. Like, that's their job, over 10 years. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting way to do it, that, if you were able to get the product right and bootstrap, I don't see a better option.
All right, let's turn it over to Ken for the fire round.
Before we get into the fire round, so Adam, retention.com, for our listeners, what features does it offer? Who is it a good fit for if they're interested in getting more emails? And can you explain that a little bit?
Our perfect customer is a Shopify Plus store, meaning you have enough traction where you're spending $2,000 a month on your Shopify instance. I would say, to put it in revenue terms, 5 to 50 million a year is absolutely perfect. And there's like a high 90% chance that it's going to work excellently for you. 1 to 5 million in revenue, take it down to like a 70%. It's going to work. I don't know why it doesn't work for some people. It just doesn't. Below $1 million in revenue, the reason I think people don't see as much success is because either their traffic or their email program is not dialed to the point where we can resolve enough or give them emails at any price that would convert, right? If you're not converting your email at a high rate, then buying leads isn't what you should be doing. It should be dialing your email down, dialing your product down, whatever. So people that have made it to that Shopify Plus level, their businesses are great. They already have product market fit. Like, they have a ton of traffic. They figure that out. They probably crack the email thing, and it just like works for them. We have Amazon sellers that have their own stores, that have their own websites that use it for sure. It's just not who we spend our time prospecting.
On every episode, we have a fire round that we run everybody through the ringer. Are you ready? What is your favorite book?
I mentioned the Y Combinator blog posts. They're not a book. I think they're great for any entrepreneur in any sort of field. I think that in terms of building a software company, 4 Steps to the Epiphany is amazing. I think it's good for ecom too. This guy has this philosophy about customer development and how that's equally as important as product development. And you need to be doing both at the same time, rather than just making this product first and then hoping that there's an audience for it. Great book, 4 Steps to the Epiphany. Check it out.
What are your hobbies?
I live in Austin, and I got a boat a couple of years ago, and I really love wake surfing in my free time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just had a kid 7 weeks ago, so that if the definition of a hobby is what is taking up your time, my 7-week-old daughter is my hobby as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a hobby.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you do not miss about working for the man?
Back when I was doing that job, we were showing up to the desk before the financial crisis at 5:45 a.m. And I'm the type of person, I didn't do it this morning, and I kind of like was yawning when I got here. I like working out or running before I work every day. Now I do it at 6. There were no gyms open around me. I was running across the Brooklyn Bridge from Tribeca and back 365 days a year at 4:45 a.m. Not on the weekends, but like middle of the winter, snow on the ground. I was like running across the Brooklyn Bridge and back. That alarm would go off at 4:40. That sound, I mean, I can't even describe it. So when I reinvented myself, one of the things that one of the governing principles for my new life was, I will never hear an alarm go off again unless it's for an airplane to go somewhere. So that has not been a part of my life since 2011, when I decided to leave finance. Alarms. So that is the thing.
Last one. What do you think sets apart successful entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
Probably the sum of it is luck favors the prepared. And it's not like, I definitely believe that not everybody has the sort of internal, I don't even know what you want to call it, like risk loving or tenacity or stupidity, whatever you want to call it. Like the actual disposition to like handle the turbulence, or maybe situationally in your life, like you literally just cannot take the financial risk. It's like you just started, there are reasons why people can't do it. But I believe that it is a craft. I believe that I'm a student of the game, and I believe that I am a lot better at this game than I was when I started it 10 years ago. That is all summed up in, like, I think that, like, luck favors the prepared. And if you are the type of person that has, like, an overabundance of curiosity, and you have a very long timeline, and you sort of have a quality of yours is you figure systems out and how to sort of, arbitrage them or optimize them, however you want to call it, like, and you're just willing to sit there and do that for the rest of your life, and that's exciting to you. Like, I think that's a good set of characteristics to enter the game with.
Definitely really appreciate you coming on the show, Adam. Great chat. I could talk for hours on email. So I'll turn it over to David to close out the show.
You bet. Adam, if people are interested in checking out Retention, what would be the best way?
So go to retention.com. If you sort of, if you're in that wheelhouse that I mentioned for a customer, book a demo, say that you saw us on this podcast. We'll give you 25% off the first 3 months.
Sounds good. And we'll post links to all that in the show notes. Adam, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Firing the Man podcast, and looking forward to staying in touch.